Hello all and welcome to our Crochet Designs. My name is Mary and in today's tutorial we are working on the Mossy shawl. And I'm going to get a little closer so you can have a look at the stitches. Gorgeous. What? The stitch used for our Mossy shawl was, and still is, the Moss stitch, also known as the Granite Stitch, or I think there's a couple other names for it as well. But I will call it the Moss stitch today, hence the word Mossy stitch. Now that name was chosen by one of our regular subscribers here on Wow Crochet Designs, and that is Anne McC. Let's just call her Anne McC. And she actually came up with it during one of our lives, and I said, that's it. That's the name we're using. So it's called the Mossy shawl. Started off as the Mossy shawlette, and I'll explain that to you in a moment. The Moss stitch itself is a very dense, tight stitch. So if I was to make a little shawlette thing here, it would just be like, I know this sounds terrible, but like a real stiff triangle sitting in front, and it'll be sticking and you won't be able to get it to sit right. Making it into a shawl has given it a little scarf look as well as a shawl look, and we didn't have to add stitches or change stitches to get this look. All I did was roll the shawl up. Now I will be doing a little how to wear your shawl thing right at the end of this video, so you get a chance to see the two ways that I wear my shawl. But for now, the yarn I'm using today is, let me get a nice close up, it's called Noro. I purchased this yarn from the lovely Cindy from March Yarns in Colac. Now I purchased this yarn around the time that I went to see Tom from Tarndie Farm, and I did an interview with him, and then I headed into Colac, which was only a few minutes drive from there, I think 10 minutes or something, and there that store was. Gorgeous store. You have to check it out. If anyone is in Colac or anywhere near Colac here in Victoria, Australia, check Cindy out and March Yarns, because she has a lot of gorgeous yarns. This is one of them, and she has many, and I thank Cindy so much for giving us this yarn to work with. And there you go. That is Cindy, that's March Yarns. Now, okay, I started using this yarn to do the tutorial because the yarn was very dark on the camera. I stopped and started using the yellow, and let me just show you a quick footage of how dark, see how dark that is there. It's really, really dark, hard to see. All right, so what I did was I changed to the yellow yarn. It's a bit of a spot saver, it's a bit of a cheaper yarn that I had in stock, which don't tell anyone. And with that I used the yarn to a very large hook for that. But if you're going to do it with the Noro, which is what I've done here, towards the end we actually finish with the brown, because we can see the brown now. It was a lot better when it's all done up, but for the first few rows I had to do it in a lighter color. All right, so for this yarn I used, it does ask for a 5mm hook, but because let me get a close-up for you, because the stitching is rather dense, I'm trying to get the right lighting here, have a quick look at the stitch. How gorgeous is that stitching? I love, love, love. Because it's rather dense, I thought let's go for the next size up, so I used a 6mm hook. Set up the right way. 6mm hook, there you go. So 6mm hook, the yarn. How much yarn did I use? Roughly between 5 and 6 skeins of yarn. Now this is 50-gram ball yarn. The weight is, or measurement is, sorry, 100 meters per ball. So I would have used between, it was about 580 meters, which I'm not sure what that is in yards. I'll just pop that up there now, right there. We'll do it over here. That's better, you can see it better. So 500 yarns, between 500 and 600 meters. So you guys will use that much in yards as well. That's a rough amount. When I say rough, I think it was 580 altogether, roughly. Okay, now if you wanted to make more, go right up to your 600. By all means do that, or do your 6 skeins of yarn or 7 skeins, whatever. You can make it bigger or smaller. Now as you can see, it's pretty long. It goes right down to, like, my waist is just there, so it really does go down, and I've rolled it up, so it's up by about 2 layers of rolled up. You'll see how that works at the end of this tutorial. In the meantime, let's get started. You will need a pair of scissors, You'll need a darning needle or a weaving needle, nice thick one for your thick yarn, if it's a thick yarn, yeah. You will need 3 stitch markers. Now, if you are new at crochet, the first part of this shawl is a little tricky. Make sure you use your stitch markers. So after I say head off on your own, the rest you should be okay. I would still use those stitch markers to be safe. And that's pretty much it. All right, I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm just going to let you get started with your Mossy shawl. Good luck, guys. Alrighty guys, we're going to start off by doing a magic ring or a magic circle or a magic loop. Just grabbing your tail end, dropping it in front of 3 fingers, grab your working end, wrap it around your fingers, forming a little cross, if you will. Let's get a close up. Grab your hook, pass it under the first loop and pull that back loop through and up. And what you have is 1, 2, and then you have these 2 threads here. Grab that there. So you're pulling your back one back and you're holding on to everything. Okay. All right, from here we're going to chain 1, which is yarn over your hook, pull a loop through like so. Just give it a tug. You've got this space. We are going to be working in this space over the tail end, okay? So we'll be doing a single crochet for the first stitch, and that's pop your hook in that center, pull a loop through. You've got 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Just hold it there for a minute. Grab yourself a stitch marker. Oh, that's too small. Just for this first part, it's too small. I just want you to see what I'm doing. All right, so we're going to be popping it through the 2 loops like that. All right, you'll need that at the end of the row, on the return row that is. All right, chain 1, which we know how to do, yes? We're going to do another single crochet in the center, pop your hook in that space, pull a loop through, 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2. All right. Just going to give it a little tiny bit of a tug, not too much. We need to work in that space. So from here, we're going to be starting our peak already, okay? A peak is chaining 1 and 2. Pop your single crochet in there again, and that closes your peak. All right, grab your stitch marker, the little one, or whatever you've got, and popping it in the chain space, not in a stitch, just in the space. There's your space right there. So you're popping your stitch marker in that chain 2 space that we just made. Yes? All right, so we're going to do 1 more chain and 1 more single crochet in that space, like so. That's your first round complete. We're not going to pull this thread yet. We're going to wait till later because it tends to close everything up and you can't see what you're doing. We'll do the next round and then we'll close it. All right, so in the meantime, we're on our next round, and the next round is actually the repeat round, okay? So you're chaining 1 and 2. Turn your work. Now you can turn it any way you like, that way or that way. Just remain consistent throughout your work, okay? Well, let's do that so you can see what I'm doing here. Now here is, all right, here is the stitch from the row below. So you've got your little V there, okay? That's a stitch from the row below. Right in there is a chain. There's a little tiny chain there, and that was the chain you did before your last stitch. So from here, we've got our last stitch from the last round is now our first stitch. It's the only time you'll be putting a single crochet in the single crochet. All right, so just grab your hook, pop it in the stitch, pull a loop through, 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2. From here, you need to pop in a stitch marker. Now let me get a needle for you so I can show you where to put your stitch marker. All right, so we just did that single crochet right there, okay? Now remember these chain 2s that we just did right before it? Right there is where you put it. See that little stem there? That belongs to this single crochet. So your stitch marker must go in between the chain 2 and that little stem at the back. I hope that helps. A little post, if you will, because they're actually cord posts. All right. And that's that. Now you are chaining 1. Yes. Now, In every round you will have the chain 1 spaces. This is a little bit hard to see because it's the first 2 rounds, but there's a tiny little stitch there. That was the chain 1 you did in the previous round before you did your last single crochet. In that space right there, not in the center, but in that space you are popping your single crochet. This is the hardest round, guys, this past 2 rounds. After that it gets easier. Chain 1. And I've split the yarn there with that stitch marker, so don't do that, hopefully you haven't. We are now at the peak of our work, and in that space, the chain 2 space, we're going to pop a single crochet 1, chain 1 and 2, and another single crochet. Hopefully you didn't split the stitch like I just did. Let me take that stitch marker out now. All right, pull that loop up for a minute and just pop your stitch marker in that chain 2 space that you did right now. Okay, from here we are chaining 1. All right, now there's our post, and you can see the post clearer over here. Maybe it's just my stitching. It goes like that. You've got your 2 there and your 1 there. You need to skip that 1, and right in there you see a tiny little chain space. That's where you're putting your single crochet, right in that space there. All right, yes, chain 1. Now here we're going to pop our single crochet in that very last stitch we see right there. So pop your hook in and do your single crochet. Take out that stitch marker now, you don't need it there yet, you'll need it in a minute. Now before you continue, just pull up a loop. See this? We need to close this. That was our thread from before, the magic ring, and this is where the magic happens. Okay, you just give it a tug, it closes everything up, and your work looks like it already, if you look at it now, it already looks like a small shawl, a tiny shawl, miniature shawl for an ant maybe, if you will. Oh, I'm being silly now. All right, from here we are chaining 2. Yarn over your hook once and twice, turn your work. All right, now remember, the first stitch you always pop a single crochet in there. Okay, so pop your single crochet in that first stitch like so. There you go. Now grab your stitch marker. Before you do, see if you can find that chain 2. Right, it's a bit tricky. I found that after a while I didn't need the stitch marker, but for the first few rounds it's really important so you know where you're putting your hook. Okay, if you accidentally pop it in there, you're popping it through the post of the other stitch, and you don't want to do that. The post has got to be moved over, and you're going through the chain 2 space. All right, now we chain 1. The way it is we chain 1 before every single crochet, chain 1 after every single crochet. In the corners we're chaining 2, and at the end we're chaining 2. All right, so that's how you remember it. Now right next to the stitch here, there's your first stitch that we're in. There's a little space. You need to pop a single crochet in that space right next to the stitch. Only in the beginning of the round we do this. Yes, chain 1. There's your post. Be careful that you don't put a single crochet in there. Move that post over, and there's a little chain 1 space there. You're going to pop a single crochet in the chain 1 space. All right, chain 1. Now we're at our peak. And what do we do at the peak? Single crochet, chain 2, single crochet. Off you go. Single crochet, chain 1 and 2, and single crochet. All right, chain 1. Before you continue, take your little stitch marker out of there. Now for those of you who are intermediate crocheters, you don't need to do this. This is just to help out the newbies who are just learning crochet. It can be a very tricky stitch, this one, until you get to maybe your 5th or 6th round, and then it starts to fall into place. All right, from here you see that little posts right there. You're going to pop a single crochet in the space after your posts right there, and there you go, chain 1. And there is your posts again. You can tell two thick ones there and that little thin one sitting right there, that's a post. Pop it in the space with a single crochet. Chain 1. And here we are at the end of the row. Right there is our chain 2 space. See that? That's where we're going to pop our hook in that space where the stitch marker is. Single crochet right there. Okay, take out your stitch marker. All right, and there you go. That's what you should have so far. All right, super duper easy. Now we're going to repeat this round over and over again. Chain 1 and 2. When you turn your work, always remember that very first stitch you are doing a single crochet in it. It's the only time. Single crochet, grab your stitch marker and pop it in the space right there. Did I get it in the space? Yes. Chain 1. All right, and from here you've got that little chain 1 space just after our stitch. You're going to pop it in that space and do a single crochet. Chain 1. And now you're just jumping into every space. It's starting to make sense now. Single crochet, chain 1, next space, single crochet, chain 1. Then you've got your little peak right there where you do your single crochet, chain 2 and single crochet, and I've popped my stitch marker in the stitch. It should be, how naughty am I? It should be in the chain 2 space right there. So that's your single crochet, that's your single crochet, and there's your chain 2 space. That's where you need to get into, okay? So into that space right there, it's single crochet, chain 1 and 2, and single crochet. Might pay to take that stitch marker out when you do this part. Oh dear. Let's take it out. And from here, let's move everything out the way. You chain 1, you skip your post, jump into your next space with a single crochet, chain 1, jump, miss all that post, jump into the chain space with a single crochet, chain 1, miss your post, and right in there is a chain 1 space. Bit tight, but it's there. Don't miss it or you'll be 1 stitch short. Chain 1, and then you go right into that chain 2 space. See right there. All right, so you're skipping your post and you're jumping into the chain 2 space with single crochet. I'm just going to chain 1 and 2, take out that stitch marker and show you what you're doing here. All right, there you go. All right, from here you already have your shawl forming. Okay, you've got your little V look. If you look at it that way, it's already formed. This is all you are doing. You are repeating, and I'm forgetting to put stitch markers in, guys. If you are new, don't forget to pop your stitch markers in your spaces, because it can be tricky, this stitch. It really can. It can be tricky to miss the chain spaces, okay? And because it's with double crochet, you can actually see the posts. But with a single crochet, it's harder to see. See, that belongs there. All right? So when you're putting your hook in, you're putting your hook in the space right there. You're not putting it in through that. See that little loop right there? There's a little tiny, I'll pull it forward so you can see it. Right there, that thing right there at the back. A lot of times it's easy to accidentally pop it there, and you're actually popping it in the stitch. See that V? You don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you've got your loop moved over and you're popping it in the chain 1 space only. And that's the same with every stitch. Make sure that loop is over and there's your chain 1 space. All right? Right there. Now I had to show you again, as I mentioned earlier in the promo, in this yarn, because the brown you could not see. All right? So what I need you to do here now is to continue what we just did over and over and over and over and over and over and over again until you reach roughly 130 centimeters or 51 inches. And I say roughly because I ended up using altogether 5.5 skeins, or roughly 6 skeins worth. to get to the 130 centimeters or 51 inches. Roughly, that's how much I use roughly. Now again, it did start off as a shawlette, but I found because this stitch, as you can see, is rather dense, it's a very thick stitch, that it kind of was a little bit too dense when I wore it. So I started making it a little bit bigger and bigger, and then eventually I came as close to a shawl as I could get it. For a couple of more skeins, you could make it even larger, but it's entirely up to you, okay? But in the meantime, head off on your own, and when I talk about measurements, I mean, all right, well, let me find, there it is. Okay, let me show you. I mean from there to there, from the length of the measurement, not the peak section, the length where we're starting from and where we're ending. So from there to there, you need to make 130 centimeters, I think it was. Looking. Yeah, about 130 centimeters or roughly 51 inches. Again, if you want to do more, just be wary, you will need more yarn. You may need more, okay? And from here to your peak, the measurement will be 61 centimeters, or what was it? 61 centimeters or 24 inches. Now yours may not reach that, and that's fine because everybody's tension's a little bit different. And it doesn't matter if it's 1 centimeter off or 2 centimeters off, it doesn't matter. Inches, maybe it will matter, you'll make a bit of a difference. It won't show up too much, okay? But again, there's no right or wrong measurements to when it comes to shawls. As long as you can wrap the shawl around your neck, which I'll show you towards the end of our tutorial on how to wear your shawl anyways, you shouldn't have too much of a problem. Alrighty, so what I want you to do now, head off on your own, repeat this row over and over and over and over and over again until you get to your desired measurement. Don't stress too much on rows. If you wanted to stress a little bit on rows, I did between 57 and 60 rows. I didn't count them, I just did a quick rough count. But everybody's tension is different, so just focus more on the measurements. When you get to the end of your row, let's take these chain 2 undone. When you get to the end of your row, just get to your last stitch and meet me there, because we are going to be doing a final row to close up this section. Before you do go though, see this little thread you see here? Try with your yarn to end up with your threads on the edge of your rows rather than in the middle. And I know it's a little bit tricky, as sometimes the yarn, like look at all the little pieces I ended up with. Sometimes the yarn ends up, you get halfway through here or 3/4 of the way through and you're on your like 50th row or something, and it takes you so long to do it, and you end up here and you've run out of yarn. So it can be a little tricky. If you're here, don't stress, we can weave the yarn back through right up to the top and we'll crochet over those tails. It's just a lot easier to crochet over the tails than weave them in, than having them weave in, because this stitch here, it's a little tricky. Let me get a close up. It's a little tricky to weave in ends with this stitch, okay? I found that when I weaved in a couple of ends, they were coming out, and it's only because it's a single crochet and then you've got that space between them, all right? So sometimes the ends would stick out there. But that's just, it's a small tip if you're interested in tips. The other little tip I have is I do tend to pop, well, not that one because we're going to use that for our work. I will pop a little stitch marker in the thread so it doesn't come undone. If you want to walk away, make a cup of coffee or something, and you come back and half your work is undone because it got stuck under your shoe or something, this way it won't, okay? It'll just sit into place, all right? These are just little tips that occasionally I like to pop in a few tips. I haven't done that for a while, so I thought I'd pop in 1 or 2 tips. Thank you so much. Head off on your own, do your gazillion rows, and I'll meet you back here in a moment. Alrighty guys, here we are at the end, and I can't fit it all in. Let's see how far out I can get. I can't fit it all in, but there you go. All right, what I would like for you to do now is to make sure your measurement from this peak to that peak, all along that side there, it's a bit messy at the moment, sorry, because I wanted to show you what to do with those ends. Make sure that measurement is roughly 130 centimeters or 51 inches, right across from this end to that end, not from the top to the peak, just from end to end, if that makes sense. Run your measuring tape along here and you're looking at 130 centimeters or roughly 51 inches. It doesn't matter, it can be either way, all right? Now, remember before I mentioned about ends, and this is where it happened right here for me. Have a look at this. I did the whole row and it got to here and I thought there's no way I'm going to make it right across. So what I did was I added the thread there. Let's grab a darning needle so I can show you quickly what we can do. You might or might not be able to see it, we'll see. So just thread your needle. All right, so let's get a close up so you can see. Pop that out the way. That's where I am right there. All right, my thread is here. So what I'm going to do is pop my thread in between the thread. I'm splitting the thread and I'm bringing it all the way through to the top of that work. If you had yours right in the middle there, good luck trying to weave them in because they come out. I've tried it. You can try, it's not saying you can't do it, but I just pull that thread right through there. You can't see it, it's in there, and now, I'm going to take it out for now, we're going to be crocheting over it. And then we can weave it in under the crochet. Bring that out a bit. Then we can weave it in under that crochet. All right, and I'm going to do the same with this one, and it just takes a second to do. All right, now hopefully yours didn't end up like that. If it did, oh well, do exactly what I'm doing. All right, now this one here, it kind of, let's have a look. It's kind of way up the top here. So I'm going to split the threads up the top, going all the way through, just being careful it's not too visible on the other side. It's a little bit, but not much, which is fine. Just pass it through. And once again, we're going to crochet over that tail, and then we're going to weave it in across there under the crochet. All right, we're going to do a row right across here now. All right, from here, this is where I left off, and this is roughly probably where you would have left off. Remember the stitch I told you to pop your stitch marker in? If you didn't, doesn't matter. I still need to chain one and do my last single crochet. All right, so let's take that stitch marker out. I don't need it in that one there, the loop. Okay, so then I did my single crochet right there, yeah, chaining one and single crochet in that very last, and I've put the stitch marker in the chain, in the single crochet there, and not in the chain two space. See how easy that mistake can be? So we'll take that out of there. Let's move everything out the way so you can see. And there is your chain two space. All right, you pop your single crochet in your last chain two space. All right, chain one. You don't need stitch markers anymore because this is a final round. All right, so in that same space you're going to pop another single crochet right there, and what you've done is you've just formed a little corner. Turn your work to the side. We are now going to work along the side where all our threads are. All right, along here, if you had to think in maths point of view, you have 2 chains in every section, yes? But what we want to do, we don't want to be putting 2 single crochets in there, or it's going to really stretch our rounds. But we still want to be putting enough to keep it closed. If we just put 1 in there, it's going to be tight. So what we want to do is pop in 1 in one and 2 in the next, 1 in one, 2 in the next, and so on. So in that first space you come to, do 1 single crochet. Your next space, do 2 single crochets, 1 and 2. In your next space you do 1. In your next, 2. 1 and 2. In your next, 1. In your next, 2, 1 and 2. Now we're coming up to those tail ends. I'm going to grab that dark one. There's 2 of them, yeah? I'm going to hold on to one at the back, like that. And the other one goes the opposite direction, like so. In that first stitch you're putting 1 single crochet, and in your next one you're crocheting over the second tail. You are popping 2 single crochets, 1 and 2. Okay, pop it at the back. You're going to weave that in later. In your next stitch you're doing 1, whoops, tighten that stitch up, it's a bit loose, and the next 2, and so on. That's all you're going to do all the way across this row, catching all your threads. Do 1 in there and 2 into your next. All right, 1 in the first, 2 2 into the second, and it doesn't matter how you do it. And if you accidentally do one extra, it should be okay, we'll pass. 1 into the first, and we're coming up to a tail. I'm going to grab that, and this is an end where I need to put 2 into the next. So we just crochet over the tail, and you do 2 single crochets. It doesn't matter either way. 1 extra stitch, 1 less, it doesn't matter in this case. And now we're doing 1 in there. I'm going to pass that tail over this way because we've got 2 there. This is when I came up to a couple of knots within the skeins. It happens. 1 in there. Was it 2? 2, 1, and now we've got 2. It was a lot of knots in this one, wasn't there? 2 in there. Or 1 into your next. And so on, all the way across. What I want you to do is keep going, but I want you to get to the center of your work, which is that middle tail right there. See that little, oh, let's get a close up. See that little center? This is your peak. Remember your peaks? Just pop your stitch marker there. All right. And when you get to that stitch marker, I'll show you. This is where we are now. Keep doing your 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Get to your stitch before your center, and I'll meet you up here in a moment. Alrighty guys, here's our little peak area. Okay. Let's get a nice close-up for you so you can see what I'm doing. That's the center where we did our magic ring or magic circle or magic loop. Now I ended up with 2 here. I've got to do another 1 in there. It doesn't matter because when we get to that center, you need to do just 1. All right. So we're going to pop whatever you're up to here. I'm up to 1. All right. Now we're in the center. We're going to take that stitch marker out. Now see your center, you may still have a little tiny bit of a gap there if you didn't pull too hard in to begin with, but it does tend to open up anyway. So what you're going to do is pop your hook in that center stitch, regardless of how loose it is or how tight it is. Grab the tail and just do 1 single crochet over it like that. All right. Then you start off with your 2 single crochets in the next, which is 1 and 2, and you do 1 in the next, whoops, and 2 into your next, and so on. All right. Oh, that's a little bit too close, isn't it? Sorry guys. 1 into the next, and 2 into your next, like so, and you know the rest. All right, so what I want you to do, continue along doing your 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, crocheting over your tails as you go, like so. When you get to your stitch marker, this stitch marker is the last one you did in the very last round before we started this, okay? That was the one before that round, so it's in that chain 2 space, waiting for you to turn back around and pop a single crochet in there. But we're not going to do that. We're going to come across here. When we get to here, I'll tell you what we're going to do next. So continue from this side right here with your 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, all the way up to your last 2 stitches here somewhere, roughly around there, okay? And wait for me there and I'll tell you what we're going to do next. Alrighty guys, I am here at the end of the row, okay? Now I have, and I'll show you a nice close-up, and it doesn't matter what you landed on here, okay? I have the 2 rows to go of that row and that very last row. Now I landed on a 2, 1, I'm going to pop my 2 in here because I landed on 2. If you didn't, just pop your 1 in there. So I'm going to pop my 2 in there. Now this is, see how inconsistent this yarn is, it's normal. In that chain 2 space, I'm going to pop a single crochet, chain 1 and single crochet, but my last single crochet, I want it to look like it's even with this. So I'm going to pop it, let's take the stitch marker out for starters, you can see. I'm actually going to pop it in the chain, one of the chains right there. So I'm grabbing my single crochet and popping it through the stitch, like so, and finishing off my single crochet. All right, so it actually looks like I formed the corner. Then all I'm going to do is pull a loop through. Yes, as tall as you like, doesn't really matter. Give it a cut, you can make it short, tall, it doesn't matter because all you're going to do is weave that in a minute. All right, if you were to have done, now let me show you, a single crochet in each stitch, that would be really scrunched up like this. If you were to do 2 single crochets in each stitch, your stitch will be like that, and you would have like, it's hard to explain. Let me show you one of the inconsistent parts. Right there's a little bit inconsistent, a bit thick, and you can actually see how it bubbles a little tiny bit. Oh, here's a good one. That orange underneath there was really thick, so was the black, and then so was this dark, oh, let me get a close up for you, dark one. So it looks like it goes up. Don't stress too much about that. That's the yarn being inconsistent. So you just need to give it a wash and just to tug it all into place. Look how thin the yarn is there. All right, it's the same stitch. It's just that the inconsistency of the yarn might look a little crooked. If you're using this yarn, look how thick that one stitch is right there in comparison to one that's a few stitches away. Okay, they're exactly the same stitch, they're just a bit of an inconsistent yarn. When you wash and give this a little gentle stretch, or if you want to pin it down, it's entirely up to you. A lot of people don't with shawls because it's hard to pin down a shawl. I would still pin it down when you wash and block it, stick some pins in, even if you have to put a row of towels along the ground. But I would really stick some pins in and let it sit there for a couple of days until it dries. In the meantime, remember how we crocheted over all the tails? You need to weave those in, and I'm just going to weave one in for you, and then you can actually go ahead and do the rest. Let's find a nice light colour for you. So you can, oh, there's no light colour. Here we go, there's a light colour. Okay. Sometimes with the darker colours, it's hard to see what I'm doing. It's a very unusual colour to use online. I'm going to remind myself not to use this colour again. The dark colours, I mean, not so much the yarn was okay. It's just the colouring, it's hard to see. All right, so here's our little tail end, and we've already crocheted over at the back. That's the front, and it doesn't really matter because once you start weaving in this end, it should be hidden. And I thought I was smart doing it here, but this is really dark to see. Anyway, so really all you're doing is splitting your yarn, making sure you get through all thicknesses, and before you pop your needle through, just check the front that you can't see your needle. Now I can see it a little bit there, so I'm going to take that needle out, okay, because you've got to do it right. Even if you want, you can do parts of it, like do parts of the weaving in, get halfway through it like that. Check it, you can't see it, pull it through. All right, then continue along the row. If it helps you, because I think this will help a lot, be a lot easier. You have to see that needle right there, yeah? But it's not enough that you go one way. Now you got to turn around and go back the other way in a different section, of course, so you don't unravel. That's the stitch we just went through there. I'm going to jump over it and go under the next few stitches, pop the needle through. It's relatively thick now. Let's check, can't see the needle in the front, and you can't. And away you go, pop that needle through. We're going to do it a little bit more because, you know, I'm a little bit pedantic in this area of weaving. Even though I don't like doing them, I'm still pedantic. All right, no, there's none there, so you just pull it through like so. Pull out your needle and you just give your work a cut. If you want to go through that third time, it's quite all right to do that as well. But once you do that, because we've already crocheted over the tail, then we've weaved it one way and then we've gone the other way as well. You're going to do that with the rest of your tails, all right? So there you go, guys. That's all there is for this particular shawl. What I need for you to do now is to weave in the rest of your gazillion ends, and you will have heaps, but that's, you know, it's part of it all, really. It really is. So go ahead and weave in all those ends. I'm not going to do it that way because that's not the right way in the end, is it? So it doesn't really matter, because the idea of this piece is that when you went over one way and you turned around and went the other way, there's no right or wrong side. So that's the good thing about this. I'm just going to tuck in these ends because it looks really messy. Don't tell anyone. Shh. This one you can't tuck in. It doesn't matter. Stick around for a few minutes and I'll show you how you can wear your shawl. So there you go, guys. That was the pattern. Now let's work on how to wear our shawl. All right. Now, for those of you who know this, I started creating the shawl as a shawlette, and I didn't like the look of it. So I thought, let's make it as a shawl, and most shawls reach from wrist to wrist. Most normal shawls will reach that far. Little tiny bit over as well, like this one here. Yours doesn't necessarily have to be that big. I have stretched it a little bit by playing with it, as you do, trying to work out many ways of wearing our shawl. So here is one way, all right? You've got your piece like this. You're going to roll that little one, just that little tiny bit once and twice. Then you're going to grab the tail ends there, little tail ends, and we're going to pop it around the back of our head. Oh, I'll turn around so you can see this part. And tie it in a knot. And then you tie it in a second knot. Alright? And then you turn around and you've got this look right here. So not only do you have a shawl look or a little shawlette look, this is what we were going for in the first place, but you also have a scarf with the shawl look as well. So if you decide, oh, it's winter or cold weather and I want to pop my jacket on, which I didn't undo properly the first time. I didn't take off properly the first time. And there you go. Pop your jacket on and there you go. So it keeps you warm around your neck, warm on your chest, looks good as well. And also warm behind the back of your neck as well, with all that thickness around there as well. So that is actually one way you can wear your shawl. Now let me show you one other way. Oh, I'm trying to take it all undone. I'm going to turn it around, guys, because I can't see what I'm doing back there. And the other way is opening up your shawl, popping it behind you like so. Okay? And then, see those little tail ends? You're going to tie them up in front once, in front a second time. Then you're going to give that a bit of a tug so that your little tail ends have disappeared. And then you just wear it like a proper shawl. It sits off the shoulder and it's right down there. Hopefully you can see the tip of that right down there like that. And once again, if you find it's cold and you want to pop your jacket on, this jacket on, jacket off, jacket on, jacket off. I'm working up a sweat here, guys. You can pop your jacket on, like so. And once again, you can have the shawl to keep your back and the back of your neck warm, and this part to keep your neck at the front warm as well. So there are the two ways of wearing your shawl. Lovely. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to join us on our lives at, I hope you can see that properly now. Join us on our lives at 4 p.m. Wednesday afternoons or Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Melbourne, Australia time. And don't forget to like, subscribe and share and do all those wonderful things that you guys pretty much already do for me. And all I want to say right now is gorgeous, love my shawl. Ciao for now.